There we go.
61, go ahead. Sorry, can I just confirm the category of the race side? Yes, camera reference 1471. Repeat 1471, over.
Justin?
Morning, sir.
Yeah, so we should. Oh, okay. It's also we have a plan. There's one we anticipate more damage to trains, so we're confident the trains already
Yeah, I'll shut it,
in
mate.
case.
Yeah, shut it, and then we'll just look at open up at about 10 10.
Oh, Mark, sorry. Justin, can you put a few kitty cat treats out? He's already fleeced me for some. He's looking for some.
Because they've got these strings on their noses here, and they're very. I don't think I've had them before.
Yeah.
Cooper going there?
No, I think she's away.
Train it to recognise things.
Oh, brilliant.
But
What,
it's
to
so
recognise
finicky,
the
like someone has to-
captions?
No, not the captions.
Yes. Yeah.
Morning, man. Morning, sir. Morning, sir. Morning. So that's not how you want to start your holiday, is it?
It pissed me off. Manchester City. She was right. You know, that's your first piece of deal.
I'm ready.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
I'm sure this check. This is good. Ryan here. EasyJet are pretty cool. They're a bit of that. It's in the future, aren't they? They don't do it. They don't do this right. It's right. Well, look, their flights are probably cheaper than cheaper from London.
What, it's like charging for a flight or something? What are you talking about? You should be free to do that. Whose side are you on anyway? Come on. I'm afraid we've missed it.
Buy your ticket, go down into the overground, get your ticket, and I mean, look, it's my fault. There were these
Order, order. Motion for the unopposed return. Minister to move. We now come to questions. Secretary of State for Foreign and Commonwealth and Development Affairs, Iqbal Mohammed.
Question number 1, Mr. Speaker.
Minister.
I'm deeply saddened that more than 2 decades after the tragic deaths of brothers Sakil and Saeed Dawood in 2002, the family is still waiting for Saeed's remains to be repatriated. Following the conclusion of the criminal case this year, our consular teams remain fully committed to resolving this matter and continue to raise this with the Indian authorities to secure a resolution.
Iqbal Mohammed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Saeed and Sakil Dawood were abducted and murdered in Gujarat, India in February 2002. Their nephew and my constituent, Imran Dawood, survived the attack. For over 23 years, their family has sought accountability and the return of the victims' remains. The previous Labour and Tory government supported the family during the court trials, which ended earlier this year without justice. I previously wrote to the Foreign Secretary on the 1st of October regarding the Dawood family campaign, which has sought repatriation of the family's remains. We also held a parliamentary event on the 22nd of October, which the FCDO leadership were invited. Would the Foreign Secretary meet with the Dawood family, and will she commit to providing urgent direct support to assist further in securing the family's remains held by the Indian government for over 2 decades and help the family achieve some level of closure?
Minister.
We will, Mr. Speaker.
Rachel Taylor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Question 2, please.
Minister.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. We collaborate closely with our international partners to deter and disrupt the perpetrators of malicious cyber activity and to hold them to account. And just last month, the UK, along with the US and Australia, sanctioned Medialand, a major Russian cybercrime syndicate which enabled ransomware and phishing attacks against UK businesses, underscoring our commitment to tackling illicit cyber activity.
Rachel Taylor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The last year has seen cyber attacks on some of our biggest household names, including Jaguar Land Rover, putting jobs and livelihoods in my constituency of North Warwickshire and Bedworth at risk. What action is the Minister taking with the UK's partners overseas to tackle this growing threat, both in our country and throughout the world?
Well, Mr. Speaker, she raises a crucially important issue on behalf of her constituents, and incidents like the attack on Jaguar Land Rover serve as a stark reminder that the cyber threat is not just an abstract concept, but it's one that has real-world costs. And we're working closely with international partners, and that includes being a founding member of the Counter-Ransomware Initiative, which in October led the agreement of a supply chain resilience guidance endorsed by 67 countries, and we're working closely with other partners through the UN and other bodies.
Rishi Sunak.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In the past 12 months, nationally significant cyber incidents have doubled, and as the Minister will know, many backed by hostile foreign states. Now, the National Cyber Force are clear that offensive cyber operations play a part in ensuring our national security. So, given the environment where our adversaries are cooperating, could I ask the Minister to continue deepening our cooperation with our Five Eyes partners in this domain, not least because I know firsthand how much they value the particular capabilities that the UK brings to bear in this area?
Well, Mr. Speaker, the former Prime Minister is absolutely right to raise this issue, and the level of hostile state activity is significant and it's growing, and that's why we're working closely with international partners. We provided almost 30 million in support for international cybersecurity capacity building, including for Ukraine, but also working with other partners, and we're also working on issues such as sanctions. We have sanctioned 26 cyber criminals, 4 entities linked to malicious cyber activity, and 16 Russian military intelligence officers, including an attribution of cyber units within the GRU. So our cooperation with Five Eyes partners and others is absolutely crucial.
Drew Snowden, Shadow Minister.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. The whole House and country should rightly be concerned about cyber attacks. From malign cyber activity directed at MPs and the Electoral Commission to Chinese companies linked to global malicious cyber campaigns. So when is this government going to stand up to China and address this threat? Can the Minister tell the House when they will send a strong message to the Chinese Communist Party by blocking their super embassy application and finally place China on the enhanced tier of the Foreign Influence Registration Scheme?
Minister.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I've been very clear about just how seriously we take the activity in the cyber domain from different states. It's significant, it's growing, as I pointed out. We're working closely with international partners. He'll understand that I won't go into the detail of all of our work on that, but I do want to commend the work of our National Cyber Security Centre, the work that's done with businesses and individuals, and indeed this place, Mr. Speaker, to ensure our resilience is in place. And we're going to continue to work with international partners to counter these threats.
Right, Reader.
Question number 3, Mr. Speaker.
Finished.
Mr. Speaker, modern slavery refers to horrific situations in which individuals are exploited through coercion, threats, deception, forced labour and human trafficking. We are determined collectively to do all we can to end it. That's why we work through a range of multilateral bodies like the UN, G7 and the OSCE to prevent exploitation and eradicate all forms of modern slavery. We convened international partners earlier this year to agree how we can work better together to address modern slavery in global supply chains and a guiding set of principles for doing so.
Reader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As chair of the All-Party Parliamentary Group for International Trade and Investment, I've heard firsthand how new technology is making it easier to track supply chain risk. So, what is the Minister doing to support better monitoring and data sharing with our international partners to ensure we can identify forced labour use at source in countries that support the UK economy?
Mr. Speaker, my honourable friend is right to raise this. We are clear that no company in the UK should have forced labour in its supply chain. We work with our partners to promote the role that new technologies can play in reducing forced labour risks in supply chains. This includes developing an interactive tool to identify child labour risks in agricultural commodity supply chains, using satellite data to improve working conditions in South Asia's brick industry, and creating AI-powered chatbots that can provide vulnerable workers with rights-based guidance.
Gregory Campbell.
Mr. Speaker, will the Minister have discussions with some of the large retail chains where we often see occasions where there is misuse of labour in overseas territories, particularly in Africa and the Far East?
Raising this, and he will be aware that we believe no company in the UK should have forced labour in their supply chain. He may also be aware that in the trade strategy, the government launched a review of its approach to responsible business conduct policy, and it is important that we continue to work together to make sure that we eradicate modern slavery from any of our supply chains.
Sarah Day.
Question 4, Mr. Speaker.
For the Secretary.
Mr. Speaker, with permission, I will answer questions 4, 7, 18 and 19 together. The UK continues to strongly support Ukraine and the Ukrainian people in the face of continued Russian aggression, including appalling strikes against civilians this weekend. Last week, the Prime Minister convened the coalition of the willing leaders who welcomed US efforts to seek a just and lasting peace. And tomorrow I will join other NATO foreign ministers and reaffirm UK support for a strong and sovereign Ukraine.
Sarah Day.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I thank the Secretary of State for her answer. Since 2022, 1,600 Ukrainians have sought refuge in Somerset away from Putin's war machine, many making Glastonbury and Somerton their home. But the US-led peace negotiations being dictated by Russia risk excluding US security guarantees, leaving many Ukrainians in fear of returning to Ukraine. So what discussions has the Secretary of State had with Cabinet colleagues on implementing a pathway to settled status so Ukrainians may have a permanent future in the UK? Well, as she will know, I and many other people have been involved in welcoming people as part of the Homes for Ukraine scheme, and we continue to do so and support the role that they are playing in our country, and that will continue. But I would also say to her, she referred to security guarantees. I can tell her that the Ministry of Defence is involved in direct discussions on the detail of how security guarantees would need to work. It is essential as part of a just and lasting peace.
Sarah Green.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Point 24 of Russia's peace plan proposes establishing a humanitarian committee to resolve outstanding issues such as prisoner exchanges on an all-for-all basis and the return of civilian detainees and hostages, including children. Mr. Speaker, this approach conflates prisoners of war with stolen children who are afforded special protected status under the 4th Geneva Convention. So can I ask the Secretary of State what guarantees she can provide that the UK will ensure all Geneva Convention signatories uphold their obligations in line with international law and the return of the stolen children?
Kidnapped and stolen children from Ukraine need to be returned to their families and to their country. That is an essential thing that must happen and is unconditional on anything else. The UK is continuing to support the Ukraine and other countries in the work to trace and identify where children are, and including direct work which has helped identify the locations of 600 stolen children.
Jim Dixon.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and can I thank the Secretary of State for her answer, and in particular the UK Government's continued excellent work to marshal the coalition of the willing in support of Ukraine. Would she agree with me that in any peace agreement arrived at in the future, that key Ukrainian red lines need to be defended? The preservation of Ukraine, key parts of the Donbass not under Russian control, no Russian-imposed limits on Ukrainian armed forces, and freedom of the country to join NATO.
Well, we have been clear throughout this that, first and foremost, the future of Ukraine is for Ukrainians to decide. That means, as the Prime Minister said last week, borders should not be changed by force, but also that it has to be a sustainable peace, not just an opportunity for Putin to pause and then come again, because that would be not just a threat to the security of Ukraine, would also be a threat to the security of Europe.
John Milne.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. A lasting peace in Ukraine can only be achieved if we remove the incentives for war. However, President Trump's initial peace plan, badly translated as it was from the Russian, included such measures as a dramatic cut in Ukrainian army manpower, the surrender of key fortress positions, a pledge never to join NATO, and an open door to Russian propaganda across the whole of Ukraine. Would the Minister agree that peace on such terms would only encourage Putin to resume war in a few years' time, but on much stronger terms than today?
Well, I think the Prime Minister addressed some of these points last week. There were initial proposals that were published, as the Prime Minister said. Some of those issues were clearly unacceptable, and there have been considerable discussions since then, including in Geneva and in the US, between the US and Ukraine. Those discussions have been important, and we continue to support Ukraine. And the important issue about the lasting peace is it cannot simply be an opportunity for Putin to continue his aggression after a pause, and that is why security guarantees, that is also why the lasting peace arrangements are so crucial. Everyone wants to see peace. It has to be lasting.
Joanna Baxter.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. President Putin has proposed that Russia assume sovereignty of Crimea, Donetsk and Luhansk as part of any so-called final peace settlement with Ukraine, which would carry profound consequences for the 1.6 million children who are currently living under Russian occupation in those regions. But the evidence is clear that Russia has pursued a sustained, systematic policy of indoctrination, militarisation and forced deportation of Ukrainian children. So does my right honourable friend agree that accepting that proposal would risk permanently stripping those children of their legal protections, erasing their Ukrainian identity in direct violation of the 4th Geneva Convention and the most basic principles of international humanitarian law?
Well, my honourable friend is right to champion Ukrainian children, and can I commend the work she has continually done to be a voice for children in Ukraine. She is right to highlight the horrendous breaches of the principles underpinning the UN Charter by Russia repeatedly throughout this conflict and before, and also to recognise Russia has continually been the aggressor in this war. When everyone else has been pursuing peace, all Putin has done is escalate war, and that has continued to happen. All of us want to see an end to the war, but we have to keep the maximum pressure on Russia in order to get a lasting peace.
Sadhu Kumar.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As we await the outcome of negotiations to end the war in Ukraine, which must be rooted in the voices and needs of the Ukrainian people, access to healthcare must be essential to rebuilding the nation. What steps is my right honourable friend taking to ensure UK-backed reconstruction strengthens rehabilitation and healthcare infrastructure, and will he meet with me to support my efforts to link allied health professionals within Ukraine?
Secretary.
Well, can I welcome my honourable friend's point, because we are clearly continuing to provide Ukraine with support that they need on military grounds to defend themselves, but we are also supporting the Ukrainian people. We're being guided by the priorities that the Ukrainian government has set out in terms of the aid funding that we provide. That includes supporting their public services, but also, crucially, their energy infrastructure, which will be vital this winter.
Shadow Minister Wendy Morton.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We all want to see Ukraine, a country that has made huge sacrifices to defend its freedom, secure a peace on its own terms. To put pressure on Putin and weaken his ability to wage war, we must go harder after the money fuelling his war machine. We've seen reports that Lashmi Mittal's company has been buying oil from Russia. When was the government first made aware of this? And does the Minister believe there may be grounds for sanctions?
Foreign Secretary.
Well, she will know that the honourable member will know that the UK has led the processes around sanctions against Russian oil and gas in particular, and also to lead the way in encouraging other countries, including countries across the world, to withdraw from purchasing Russian oil and gas. We continue to take this immensely seriously. She will know that sanctions enforcement is addressed on a case-by-case basis, but we do take both the sanctions and the need for enforcement of them immensely seriously.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm sorry, but it's simply not good enough for the Foreign Secretary to dismiss questions by saying sanctions are not discussed on the floor of the House. This is a man and a business that have profited by buying Russian oil, fuelling Putin's illegal war. A war that has caused death and destruction in Ukraine. He may have reportedly fled Britain, but will the Foreign Secretary ensure that all his business interests are thoroughly investigated and that wider investigations are carried out to determine whether this practice is more widespread?
Foreign Secretary.
Well, again, as a former government minister, she will know both how seriously we've taken this case and how far this government has led the way on sanctions, and also how we ensure that processes around sanctions enforcement, including on Russian oil and gas, are taken extremely seriously and are implemented appropriately as well. And I would also just say that this has been critical in terms of the pressure that the US has taken as well now on Lukoil and Rosneft, as a result of which Lukoil have now been forced to seek to sell their foreign assets as a result of the pressure that we have put on. There has been no country that has led the way more than the UK in putting economic pressure on Russia.
Councillor Miller, Liberal Democrat spokesperson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ukraine needs the support of its allies to counter Russia's threat. Yet Belgium and the ECB are holding out against the EU using frozen Russian assets to give Ukraine the funds it needs. The Wall Street Journal has reported that while discussing the original 28-point plan, Kirill Dmitriev pitched to Steve Witkoff that US firms could be the first to receive payments from those assets for lucrative contracts in Russia and Ukraine. It is time for the UK to show international leadership, even as Belgium, the ECB and the US vacillate. So will the Foreign Secretary support my bill for the UK to seize the £30 billion in frozen Russian assets held in this country and put them at Kiev's disposal for its defence?
Well, we have been clear about the importance of mobilising the Russian sovereign assets in order to invest in and support Ukraine. As he will know, the proposal that has been put forward by the EU, which is one we support, is one for reparation loans based on those sovereign assets. That allows us to maintain the appropriate stability and approach to the financial markets, but also mobilise those assets to support Ukraine. The purpose of doing so is because Russia should pay for the damage that they have done. So we will continue to press for those Russian sovereign assets to be mobilised for Ukraine.
Morris.
Question number 5, Mr. Speaker.
Foreign Secretary.
Mr. Speaker, with permission, I will answer questions 5 and 11 together. The humanitarian situation in Gaza remains dire as winter weather draws in, while thousands of families do not have proper shelter. This weekend, after more than a year's delay, we were finally able to get UK-funded tents into Gaza through Kerem Shalom. Working with UNICEF, those tents will provide critical shelter for 12,000 people. But more support is needed, and so from today, the government will also match pound for pound new donations to the Disaster Emergency Committee Middle East appeal over this winter, with an additional £3 million support through those charities to help those most in need and get support to families in Gaza.
Thank the Foreign Secretary for her response. I'm very concerned about the recent reports that over 1,000 tents were consigned and prevented from entering into Gaza. So can she just assure me what's being done further to make sure that any aid that is given from the UK in terms of tents to provide shelter as the winter season approaches, that we're doing whatever we can to get those tents through the border to those that need it the most?
Foreign Secretary.
Thank the Honourable Friend for his question. We are continuing to press to get increased humanitarian aid in. The level of aid is now increasing, and as we have seen, we've been able to get the UK-funded tents into Gaza. But I have seen myself some of the warehouses in Amman, which are still holding UK-funded aid, wheat that could feed hundreds of thousands of people, and that we need to get into Gaza, and that is why we need all of the crossings opened.
Thomas.
More than two-thirds of Gaza's children, 700,000, are living in tents at high risk of preventable disease, and growing numbers are suffering malnutrition, diarrhoea and pneumonia. Given that the Trump plan called for a minimum of 600 trucks of humanitarian aid to enter Gaza daily, and nothing like that number are yet getting in, will my right honourable friend step up the government's efforts to secure sustained access for UNRWA and other critical UN humanitarian agencies?
Foreign Secretary.
Well, we desperately need the humanitarian aid into Gaza. My honourable friend is right that this was part of the 20-point peace plan. It has widespread support, but it is just essential. Basic humanitarian needs, shelter, support and healthcare are still needed for families in Gaza. That is why we're continuing to press not just for the crossings to be reopened, but also for aid, for the restrictions on aid to be lifted, so that we can get into place the shelter kits and the equipment and the healthcare support families need.
Chris Law.
Mr. Speaker, the death toll in Gaza has now exceeded 70,000 people. Since the ceasefire, at least 357 Palestinians have been killed and 903 wounded, with Israel committing close to 600 violations, including recent video evidence of extrajudicial murders. Does the Minister agree that this suggests that this ceasefire is a name alone?
Well, what I would say to the honourable member is that this ceasefire is fragile, but it's also crucial. And we cannot go back to the situation that we have had, the unbearable situation for the last 2 years. That is why we have said that there should be strengthened monitoring around the ceasefire, but also we need to make the forward momentum, including having the Palestinian Committee set up, including the humanitarian aid increasing, and also decommissioning proposals that we have put forward in order to remove weapons from Hamas.
Khan.
Mr. Speaker, a hindrance to the humanitarian aid is not just about supplies and the trickle of access that we have into Gaza, but it's also the safety and security of aid agencies operating within Gaza. So recently we witnessed 2 individuals gunned down in broad daylight by the Israeli soldiers. Does the Minister believe that we now need to look at some international United Nations independent peace forces to actually assist in the humanitarian work?
Yeah.
Well, I think the honourable member was raising a couple of different issues there. The importance of making sure that aid workers can operate in Gaza is hugely important, and we continue to press for NGOs to be fully recognised so they can continue their important work. But I think he was also referring to some of the shocking footage of a shooting in West Bank, which there must be a thorough, swift and transparent investigation, because I think the footage of that shooting was extremely disturbing.
Willie Morton, Shadow Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We've heard ministers in this House and elsewhere make claims about Israel and aid. Does the Foreign Secretary recognise the COGAT and CMCC figures showing 4,200 trucks of aid entering Gaza a week, meeting the targets agreed as the 20-point plan is implemented? Will she thank the COGAT team for their work in getting aid in, including those officers attacked by Hamas terrorists on the 7th of October, who remain committed to improving the humanitarian situation in Gaza? And does she agree the best way to secure more aid into Gaza is for the UK to work with partners to implement the ICF and to secure the elimination of Hamas?
Secretary.
Well, we think the whole of the 20-point plan needs to be implemented. That includes the disarming of Hamas, it includes the introduction of the ISF and also the withdrawal of the IDF as part of an overarching plan. What I would say to her on the humanitarian aid is, as I responded, it has increased. So there are more trucks going in. However, it is not enough, and it is not going to all areas of Gaza. And that is why it is crucial that all of the crossings need to be opened. Currently, the Jordanian crossing is still closed. Too many of the other crossings are still closed. So it's immensely important that those crossings are opened and the restrictions are lifted.
Richard Tice.
Question 6, Mr. Speaker.
Foreign Secretary.
Mr. Speaker, last week I met with incredibly brave Sudanese volunteers who run community-based emergency response rooms that the UK is supporting, and the stories that they told me were horrific. Despite pressures from all sides for a ceasefire, the conflict and atrocities are continuing. Alongside the Development Minister, the UK Special Envoy to Sudan and our ambassadors and officials, I am in continual contact with the US, UAE, Egypt and Saudis, the members of the Quad, who are supporting action for a ceasefire, but we need that urgency of action.
Richard Tice.
I thank the Foreign Secretary. This appalling civil war with all its atrocities, how concerned is the Foreign Secretary that actually the growing influence of Iran and the Muslim Brotherhood is leading to foment deliberately extremism, and that actually is leading to the rejection of ceasefire efforts by the Sudanese regime?
Well, what I would say to the honourable member is I am deeply concerned about the escalation of this on all sides, both from the RSF and the SAF, despite the fact that there have been talks about ceasefires. Instead, we have seen continued action being taken, including in the Kordofans. I am deeply worried about the risks of further atrocities and also about the impact that this has on security issues, on extremism issues, on migration issues, but most important of all, on this horrendous humanitarian crisis, which includes rape being used as a weapon of war. That is why it's essential we have the same coordinated energy, international energy, to get peace in Sudan that we saw to get a ceasefire in Gaza.
Sarah Champion, Chair of the Development Committee.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Conflict has now reached 14 of the 18 Sudan states, and let me be frank, the humanitarian support has been paltry. 2 weeks ago, I raised in this chamber compelling evidence that the RSF will be taking Tawila before Christmas. So can I ask the Foreign Secretary what plans are being made for evacuation of civilians and humanitarian workers? Can the Minister update us on efforts the government is making to increase humanitarian support from our international partners, particularly those in the Middle East? And fundamentally, where are the women and civil society in securing the ceasefire and the peace? As a UN penholder, can she do much more to make sure that we amplify their voices?
Can I welcome the way my honourable friend has continued to raise this issue and to shine a spotlight on Sudan and the atrocities. One of the emergency room volunteers that I met from Sudan last week has involved in providing support to young women, including children and young girls who had been brutally raped. And it's horrendous what is happening, but also I have to commend the incredible bravery of those community volunteers in Sudan. Frankly, I think the international community is letting Sudan down, and we need that concerted effort. We have recently put through the resolution for the Human Rights Council, but we will continue to raise this with all our international partners.
Sir Andrew Mitchell.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the Foreign Secretary for her answer and for seeing the volunteers from the emergency rooms last week. Mr. Speaker, we're advised that during his visit to the White House, the Saudi Crown Prince, MBZ, asked President Trump to help stop the slaughter in Sudan and come up with a plan of action, and President Trump agreed to do so. As Sudan is a specific UK lead at the United Nations, can she ensure that this issue is on the agenda next time the President and our Prime Minister have one of their telephone calls?
Well, I can say to them, this is an issue that Sudan is an issue that I have already discussed on several occasions with the US Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, and will continue to do so. We have further discussions directly between other ministers and other US envoys on Sudan, because this has to be a central priority for the entire international community. Currently, neither side is accepting the US-led ceasefire proposals, and that is why we need continued pressure from all sides on the warring parties that they sign up to the ceasefire, even simply a humanitarian truce, so we can get the talks started and get the aid in.
Lee Stoltz.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I was very pleased to hear that she met with representatives of the emergency response rooms. I also met some of those incredibly brave volunteers, and of course their humanitarian organisations have been strictly neutral throughout the war, yet they've been targeted by belligerents on all sides simply for trying to feed people. So can I ask, what representations has she made specifically about the need to protect emergency response room volunteers?
I agree with all the points that my right honourable friend has made on this, because the bravery that these volunteers show has meant that they themselves are directly targeted, and they have been targeted. They described how with each change of control from different warring parties, they then end up getting targeted again by the new warring party that has taken control of their area. It is absolutely horrendous what we have seen, and we will continue to speak up for those Sudanese and other aid workers.
Good job.
Number 8, sir.
Foreign Secretary.
Mr. Speaker, can I, with permission, answer questions 8 and 15 together? China poses a series of national security threats, including espionage, cyber attacks, transnational repression, and support for Russia in its war against Ukraine. We challenge China robustly in relation to all of those threats. China is also our third largest trading partner and a country we need to cooperate with on international issues, including trade and climate change.
Good job.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the Foreign Secretary for that answer. There is a rumour going round Whitehall that the Foreign Secretary isn't the Foreign Secretary, and that the real Foreign Secretary is Mr. Jonathan Powell. So that couldn't possibly be the case, of course, because that would make a mockery of the ability to hold the Foreign Secretary to account. So can the Foreign Secretary demonstrate that she really is in charge by telling us the precise instructions she gave Mr. Powell before he met the Chinese Foreign Minister 4 days ago?
Secretary.
Well, I would just say to the honourable member, as the Prime Minister set out yesterday, we do need not just strong action on security and on the economy in relation to China in our national interest, but we also need engagement with China. And frankly, since 2018, President Macron has visited China twice and is there again this week. President Trump, we know, met President Xi in October and will visit China in April. Yet until last November, there were no leader-level meetings with China for 6 years. 6 years under the party opposite. I would say that through our National Security Advisor, through the rest of the government and through ministers, it is important that we engage with China on both security and the economy.
Jerome Mayo.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Last night, the Prime Minister said some tough things about China. He said, and I quote, "It's time for a serious approach to the national security risk from China." So the first opportunity to demonstrate that serious approach is the planning application for China's new super embassy, complete as we now know it is, with secret basement rooms. Now, in her previous role, the Foreign Secretary wrote a letter in favour of the application, but with her new instructions from the Prime Minister, does she now agree that that application should be refused?
Foreign Secretary.
Well, as the honourable member will know, there is a planning process underway which is quasi-judicial, and so I cannot cut across that. In January, as Home Secretary, alongside the former Foreign Secretary, I wrote to the planning process setting out a number of national security considerations which required resolution before a decision can be made, and further updates will follow on that. But I can say to the House, national security has been and continues to be a core priority for the government.
John Slinger.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. China clearly poses national security threats. It's also one of our largest trading partners and one of the biggest economies in the world. So does the Foreign Secretary agree that we should reject the binary choice between security and the economy and the bluster from the benches opposite, and we should instead focus on how to be strong on both national security and our economic interests?
Well, my honourable friend is right that we need to ensure that we have areas where we strengthen our security against threats from China. That includes on issues around cyber threats and also transnational repression. It also includes responding to issues around economic security, for example, around supply of critical minerals across the world. And we also need to engage with China on issues around trade, on issues around climate change, because frankly, that is what is in our national interest. And we would be letting the country down if we did not engage on both security and the economy in our national interest.
Colin Miller, Liberal Democrat spokesperson.
Mr. Speaker, 2 weeks ago, the Security Minister came to the House to describe sustained efforts by China to infiltrate Parliament and that the security agencies were launching an espionage action plan. Yet when Cabinet Ministers, including the Prime Minister and today the Foreign Secretary, are asked about Beijing's super embassy with its extensive underground facilities in the heart of London, they hide behind the statement that the decision is quasi-judicial. No one seriously believes this. It is the most political decision that will be taken next week. So beyond the threat to our democracy, what signal does the Foreign Secretary think an approval of the super embassy would send to Hong Kongers in this country who escaped state-sponsored intimidation, only to find that this government is considering making it easier for Beijing to continue persecution in the UK?
Well, I'll just obviously remind him of the due process in the planning system, which I'm sure he and his party would be the first to complain about if due process was not followed. The Security Minister has set out the importance and the work he is doing to coordinate a new counter-political interference and espionage action plan. And we continue to take action through our police, security services to tackle transnational repression. We will not tolerate any attempts by foreign governments to coerce, intimidate, harass or harm their critics overseas, especially in the UK.
Ollie Glover.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Question number 9.
Minister.
The Prime Minister raised this case with President Sisi on the 18th of November, and the Foreign Secretary has pressed for this on multiple occasions with the Egyptian Foreign Minister, most recently on the 25th of November. Mr Al Fattah must be allowed to return to the UK and be reunited with his family.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I thank the Minister for his answer, and I'm sure he will join me in welcoming the recent release of Allah from detention in Egypt. And join me in helping the many people who have helped secure that and campaign for that over the years. This week, Allah will miss the 14th birthday of his son, Khaled, because the Egyptian authorities are not letting him travel. So it's good to hear the engagement that the Minister described, but what further steps can he and the Prime Minister take to ensure that Allah is able to return to the UK to spend Christmas with his family?
Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I've set out some of the steps that we've already taken. I met with Mr Al Fattah in Cairo last month. I'm in regular contact with his family. I can assure the honourable member that this is right at the top of my priority list, alongside that of the Foreign Secretary and the Prime Minister.
Tim Rock.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ryan Cornelius, a British citizen, has been unfairly incarcerated in Dubai for the last 17 years. His son was 6 when he went to prison. His son's now 23 years old. 150 parliamentarians across both houses wrote to the Dubai authorities asking for his release on UAE's National Day today, to no avail. So can I ask the Foreign Secretary if she can use her good offices to bring some urgency and to free this British citizen from unfair detention?
Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I thank my honourable friend for his doughty advocacy for Mr. Cornelius and a range of other consular cases overseas. He will know that the former Foreign Secretary has raised this case with the UAE and met with the families on the 4th of September. We will continue to provide support to the family as time goes on, and I've seen these families myself, and I'm sure we will continue to do so at times that they find useful.
Number 10, Mr. Speaker.
Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the continued erosion of democratic rights and freedoms in Hong Kong is a matter that is deeply concerning to the whole of this House. And in October, the Foreign Secretary submitted the government's latest 6-monthly report on Hong Kong, which details how national security legislation is diminishing Hong Kong's political autonomy. We will continue to champion the rights and the freedoms of the people of Hong Kong, including through our British nationals overseas visa route and by raising human rights at every opportunity.
Joe Franklin.
Thank the Minister for her answer. Given the marked deterioration in civil liberties and democratic freedoms in Hong Kong since the introduction of the national security law, will the Minister outline what specific steps the government is taking to support those affected by these abuses, both here in the UK and abroad? Because my constituents in Guildford, many of whom are Hong Kong nationals who have made their home here under BNO route, remain deeply worried about family members who are still in Hong Kong.
I thank the honourable member for her question, and indeed we will not tolerate any attempts by foreign governments to coerce or intimidate or harass or harm their critics, indeed in the UK or overseas. But UK ministers have raised our concerns directly with Hong Kong and Chinese officials in relation to what is happening in Hong Kong, and we will continue to do so. It is indeed the case that such actions are also damaging to Hong Kong's reputation as an open and international city.
Dr. Open.
Mr. Speaker, question number 12.
Minister.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. We are working across government to build a new strategic partnership with the EU, and the Foreign Secretary and I meet regularly with European partners, and I'll be doing so later this week. And last month, I joined the Foreign Secretary and the Defence Secretary for the first foreign and security policy dialogue with EU High Representative Callas, and collaborative relationships are key to building this partnership and delivering what the British people want on growth, on the cost of living, on security, and on action to counter irregular migration.
Dr. Elpington.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. With growing Chinese espionage, with Russian aggression on the European continent, and with a capricious president in the United States, it's more important than ever that we deepen our security cooperation with our European allies. So can I ask the Minister explicitly whether he recognises, as I do, that the UK's deepest possible participation in the EU SAFE scheme is vital to common European security, and I can ask what he has done, along with the government, to try and restart and prompt the restart of the negotiations that sadly broke down with the European Union last week. Well, of course, Mr. Speaker, our security and defence partnership is broad, and the UK entered discussions with the EU on SAFE in good faith, recognising mutual strategic interest and continued commitment. And we were clear with the EU that we were prepared to make a fair financial contribution that reflected the potential for a mutually beneficial relationship and value for the taxpayer. But we've also always said that we won't sign deals unless they're genuinely in the national interest. And in this case, the deal on offer from the EU did not pass that test. But I am absolutely confident that our wider defence and industrial relationships are not affected. In fact, if you look at whether it's the deal on frigates with Norway, whether it's the £8 billion agreement with Turkey for the purchase of 20 Typhoon jets, our joint agreement with Germany on joint export campaigns in relation to boxed armoured vehicles, very much represent the very best of European defence industrial cooperation.
Then the
Well, I know the Minister appreciates the need for the EU and the UK to work very closely together in the face of global security threats and trade challenges. So, in his talks with EU colleagues, will the Minister impress upon them the damage that the proposed EU steel tariffs would do not just to our UK steel industry, but to manufacturing right across the UK and the EU?
Yeah. Well, Mr. Speaker, she has always been a very, very strong advocate for the steel industry, and I can confirm to her we are absolutely committed to defending our steel industry. We're seeking urgent clarification from the Commission on its proposals, and we need to find a bilateral solution, and any EU measures must, of course, be consistent with the TCA and uphold summit commitments and, indeed, our Windsor Framework obligations.
Williams.
Voting, please, Mr. Speaker.
Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the UK does not currently deliver direct humanitarian assistance in Pakistan-administered Kashmir or Indian-administered Kashmir, but we continue to monitor the humanitarian situation as we do elsewhere in the region.
David Williams.
Stoke-on-Trent is home to one of the largest Kashmiri communities in the UK, and many of my constituents are deeply worried by the continuing restrictions on civil liberties, arbitrary detentions and the ongoing denial of meaningful political determination in Jammu and Kashmir. Will the Minister please set out what specific human rights and self-determination concerns the UK has raised with the Indian government, and what tangible progress my constituents can expect the government to press for?
Minister.
I thank my honourable friend for his question. We strongly support individuals' rights to freedom of assembly and expression and peaceful political protest. We have consistently emphasised that any human rights violations should be fully investigated in line with international human rights law. We continue to monitor human rights issues and, where we have concerns, raise these with the Government of India.
Jim Shannon.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. There are repeated claims by community leaders and religious freedom groups that Christians in Kashmir face harassment, social pressure, threats, discrimination, surveillance and sometimes violence. So what steps is the Minister taking in conjunction with international counterparts to support the promotion of faith, especially Christianity, in Kashmir?
Minister.
Mr. Speaker, we will always continue to champion the freedom of religion and belief across the world, and he will also know that we consistently raise any human rights violations with governments across the world and will continue to do so.
We come to Topicals, Toby Perkins.
Good morning, sir.
Secretary.
Mr. Speaker, can I send my condolences and those of the government to all those who have lost loved ones in the deadly storms in India, Indonesia, Malaysia, Sri Lanka, Thailand and Vietnam. Many have lost homes and livelihoods. And I want to praise the emergency responders who have worked tirelessly and are committed to helping those affected, often at great personal risk. In response to requests for support, which we've already received, the UK is providing £675,000 to address immediate humanitarian needs in Sri Lanka and has contributed £800,000 in response to the multiple typhoons that have struck Vietnam. The UK is closely monitoring the situation and stands ready to provide further support as needed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I start by associating myself with the Foreign Secretary's comments there. The UK has shown global leadership over many years on international climate finance, both in terms of the 11.6 billion we've provided over the 5 years to 2026, and in encouraging other major nations to recognise their responsibility to those nations most in the firing line from climate change. Following last week's budget, can the Foreign Secretary confirm that Britain remains committed to providing that commitment and will include inflation increases?
Foreign Secretary.
Well, I can tell my honourable friend that obviously the details were set out as part of the budget for future financial issues, but we will continue to take action around international climate finance and support for dealing with these issues.
Andrew Rosendale, Shadow Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Last month, the government buckled under pressure over its lack of consultation with the Chagosian people on the shameful handover of sovereign British territory to Mauritius. So, if this process is genuinely intended to inform policy, what steps will the Minister take to ensure that the views expressed to the Lords Committee are free from external interference? And how will its findings actually inform the government's decision on the future of the Chagos Islands?
Minister.
Well, Mr Speaker, the honourable gentleman knows that the House of Lords International Relations and Defence Committee are engaging a wide range of Chagosians to ascertain their views on the implications of the treaty and will produce a report before Christmas, and we have seen no evidence of Mauritian interference. It's very important to recognise the wide range of views in the Chagosian community, and I very much look forward to reading the IRDC report when it's completed.
Well,
I hope he's going to check there are actually Chagosians taking part in that consultation, Mr Speaker, and not outsiders. Anyway, let's try something else. Given last week's report that the Chancellor had a £4 billion surplus rather than the £20 billion deficit, as previously suggested, will the Minister explain why the government is pressing ahead with this eye-watering, expensive £35 billion gift of British sovereign territory to Mauritius? Wouldn't scrapping this atrocious deal be a better way to help the Minister's friend, the Chancellor, restore fiscal credibility and save British taxpayers' money?
Minister.
Well, Mr Speaker, no matter how many times he gets up in this place and tries to make wild claims about the cost of this deal, it doesn't make them any more correct. I've been very clear on multiple occasions about the cost of this deal. We will not scrimp when it comes to the national security of this country. This base is crucial for the security of ourselves and our allies, and we've set out the costs very clearly.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. The freedom to practice or not practice a faith without fear is a fundamental human right. I welcome the government's commitment to promoting this for Christians and other religious communities through the appointment of a UK Special Envoy for Religious Freedom. Will the Minister explain how the FCDO continue to use its diplomatic networks and international partnerships to support all faith and non-faith communities worldwide?
Mr Speaker, my honourable friend is right, and in line with our strategy launched this year, we continue to champion every community's right to worship or not without fear or discrimination. Our Special Envoy works with partners and alongside our diplomatic network to protect this right via multilateral fora and through targeted interventions in key countries to uphold the right to freedom of thought, conscience and religion.
Rexman.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Australia has listed Iran's IRGC as a state sponsor of terrorism. So what discussions have ministers had with their Australian counterparts about matching this important action against terror at home and abroad?
Well, we continue to have many strong conversations with our Five Eyes partners on a range of issues around both state threats and terror threats. He will also know that the government has committed to strengthening the law so that we can have new prescribing tools that can apply to state threats as well as to terrorism threats. And we also take immensely seriously any threat issues to our national security from Iran.
James Dennis.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. The Minister will be aware of the work of the Westminster Foundation for Democracy and other organisations like it, which seek to strengthen democratic governance around the world. But as has been clear today, malign actors all over the world are seeking to erode political systems that promote democracy. Can I ask what the FCDO is doing to help address the global erosion of democracy?
Well, he raises a crucial point, and we work closely with our partners on this issue and support democratic institutions and values, including through the Westminster Foundation for Democracy. We fund election observation, champion media freedom, provide leadership in different forums, and we are going to be setting this as a key priority as incoming co-chair of the Open Government Partnership.
Zoe Franklin.
President Trump is directing increasingly aggressive and lethal military actions against vessels off of Venezuela, actions that experts are warning amount to extrajudicial killings. While the UK has paused some intelligence sharing in response, will the Minister now go further, explicitly condemn these actions and ensure Britain pushes back against this escalation and any further actions outside international law by the Trump administration?
Well, the honourable member will know that we always support international law and the upholding of international law. There have been reports overnight which we don't know the full details of, but the UK is not involved in those operations. More widely, the UK does not accept the legitimacy of the administration put in place by Nicolas Maduro following the 2024 election, and we support a negotiated transition in Venezuela.
Mr. Quidley.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My constituent has expressed deep concern for his family and friends in Syria who belong to a minority ethnic group. He is seeking reassurance
What steps is the Secretary of State taking to ensure that all minority communities in Syria are protected?
Minister.
I thank my honourable friend for the important question. We have consistently advocated for an inclusive political transition and underlined the importance of protecting the rights of all Syrians, publicly and in our engagement with the Syrian government. The Foreign Secretary and I were clear on UK expectations for Syria's transition when we met the Syrian Foreign Minister al-Shibani last month. The protection of the rights of all Syrians, wide consultation with Syria's diverse communities on next steps in the transition, and of course, holding perpetrators of violence to account.
Tom Gordon.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Last month I met with Anusha Ashuri and opened his exhibit Surviving Evan at Harrogate District Amnesty International event at Ripon Cathedral. Given the continued use of arbitrary detention and state-sponsored kidnapping and hostage-taking by Iran, what steps are this government taking to strengthen protections for British nationals when abroad?
Mr. Speaker, I am familiar with the case that the honourable member mentions. Indeed, at all the other detention cases in Iran, we are working to ensure that those individuals have full access to consular assistance where they need it, as indeed British nationals do across the world.
Dr. Betty Cooper.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As we know, our ODA budget is currently reduced to allow defence investment. Given the continuing need to improve global health, not least to guarantee our own health and security, would the Minister meet with myself and other concerned colleagues to discuss how best to continue to protect life-saving health programmes and the work with women and girls, which she has rightly prioritised?
I thank my honourable friend for her question. We will be very happy to meet with her. The UK will continue to centre women and girls in everything that we do internationally, from our diplomacy to our development work. We will mainstream gender across the department's work to ensure we deliver maximum impact. We are retaining our ODA target for gender equality and will share an update on further measures to strengthen our approach to mainstreaming in due course.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. There were concerning reports prior to talks last week with leaders of the British Overseas Territories that the government was planning to cave into pressure from the British Virgin Islands, the epicentre of billions of pounds of tax evasion, and allow it to restrict public access to a register of company share ownership. So can the Secretary of State inform the House of the outcome of last week's talks and reassure the British public that the government will force British Overseas Territories to comply with the law and make these registers publicly available?
Minister.
Well, she can find the communique online, Mr. Speaker, and the Economic Secretary to the Treasury and I met with the leaders from the Overseas Territories last week at the very successful Joint Ministerial Council. And again, I set out very clearly our expectations on registers of beneficial ownership. But I would point out that all OTs with financial centres have committed to upholding international tax standards, including those on tax transparency and exchange of information, as well as base erosion and profit sharing.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Since the beginning of 2025, OCHA has documented more than 1,600 attacks in the West Bank perpetrated by Israeli settlers. So what more can the UK be doing in terms of sanctions for illegal settler outposts, settlement trade, and to hold the Israeli government to account?
Minister.
Mr. Speaker, on the 27th of November, the UK, France, Germany and Italy condemned collectively the massive increase in settler violence against Palestinian civilians in the West Bank. The pace of settlement building in the West Bank continues unabated, as my honourable friend knows well, and I know that she has been engaged on these issues for some time. Israel must stop settlement expansion. It must crack down on settler violence, which has reached record levels. This government has introduced 3 waves of sanctions focused on settlements, including against Mr. Ben-Gvir.
Robin Swan.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. In an earlier answer, the Foreign Secretary said that trade relations between China and the UK were of a national interest. To that extent, can I ask what conversations her department had with Invest Northern Ireland prior to it signing a cooperation framework memorandum of understanding with the China Chamber of Commerce in the UK?
Minister.
Mr. Speaker, this government supports UK businesses to do business with China whilst being open-eyed to any risks.
Sorry. Richard Bergen.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On Donald Trump's threats of military action against oil-rich Venezuela, reports suggest that British military personnel are aboard the US warships heading towards Venezuela. So will the Foreign Secretary therefore make clear that Britain will have no involvement at all, including troops on US warships, in any Trump-led military intervention there?
Minister.
Well, Mr. Speaker, as the Foreign Secretary made clear a moment ago, the UK is not involved in these operations. There are reports overnight which we don't know the full detail, which the US will respond to, and we've been very clear that we expect all nations to operate in line with international law.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Elections Act expanded the franchise to over 3 million British nationals living overseas. As MPs, we have a duty to represent those who lived in our constituencies, but we don't know who they are or where they are. How can our embassies help?
Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the Foreign Secretary works closely with Cabinet colleagues on a number of issues, including overseas voter registration. We encourage all British nationals to register as overseas voters if they move or live abroad, as has been the approach of successive governments. We keep gov.uk under constant review, and British nationals abroad can contact their local embassy or High Commission for further information.
Debbie Abrahams.
Yes. Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, in 2023, Parliamentarians for Peace were set up in the aftermath of the terror attack in Israel and the killings of innocent Gazan civilians. On International Human Rights Day, next Wednesday, would the Foreign Secretary and her team and everyone here join us for the Parliamentarians for Peace vigil that we're hosting then? Thank you.
Minister.
I will do my very utmost, as I'm sure other ministers will.
David Mundell.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Child Nutrition Fund is one of the most effective ways to enhance the impact and value for money of ODA spending by mobilising domestic resources, philanthropic and private capital, having the potential to multiply UK ODA contributions by as much as 6-fold. In 2023, the UK Government committed to a £16 million contribution to the Child Nutrition Fund. Will ministers confirm that that will be honoured despite the changes in ODA spending?
Well, Mr. Speaker, he's been a long-standing champion on these issues, and we reaffirmed our commitment to addressing malnutrition at the Nutrition for Growth Summit in 2025, as he knows, and we continue to support the Child Nutrition Fund, which funds treatment of acute malnutrition. We're providing technical assistance, and we're supporting countries to integrate nutrition across sectors.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. With winter settling in and thousands of Gazan children still acutely malnourished, will the Right Honourable Friend work with international partners so we can go further and faster to help these children?
I can say yes, we will. That is why we have announced today that we will support the Disaster Emergencies Committee's Middle East appeal through the winter with a pound-for-pound matching a further £3 million to help support people of Gaza through the winter.
Nick Timothy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The White House has expressed concerns about sensitive cables that run under Royal Mint Court, as have the Dutch, Swiss and Swedish governments. I understand that the Foreign Office has denied the presence of such cables to the US government, and the Cabinet Office has denied it to the press. So will the Foreign Secretary stand up and just make very clear to the House of Commons that there are no such cables running beneath or near the site, yes or no?
Foreign Secretary.
Mr. Speaker, we always make national security considerations the central priority, and we continue to hold a range of discussions on national security issues with the US and with other partners. And I would just say to the honourable member, under his party, the Defence Secretary was sacked for leaking national security information, the Home Secretary was sacked for national security breaches, and they left us with the smallest army since Napoleon. We won't take any lectures from the Conservatives.
Jessica Morton.
Mr. Speaker, we've seen a year of protests in Georgia against democratic backsliding and crackdowns on political opponents, which are deeply concerning, including for those in Newport with strong links with Kataisi. What more can be done with allies to increase diplomatic pressure?
Minister.
Well, she raises this very, very important issue. We're deeply concerned by the democratic backsliding in Georgia. We've issued a number of sanctions, as she'll be aware, and I've raised concerns directly with Georgian Dream representatives, and will continue to follow the situation closely.
So, Oliver Dowden.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today is UAE National Day, marking 54 years since its full independence. In that time, it has become one of our nation's staunchest allies and a key investor benefiting constituencies up and down the country. As chairman of the APPG, will the Foreign Secretary join me in congratulating them and recommitting to this key strategic relationship?
Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I will. I was delighted to see my Emirati counterpart just yesterday. We had a minister representing the British Government at the Emirati National Day. They are a key partner. I welcome their investment all over the country, and we will take the relationship from strength to strength.
Jim Johnson.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. In July 2024, the ICJ ruled in its advisory opinion that Israeli settlement and occupation are illegal and needed to be ended and dismantled retrospectively. So can the Minister explain why, after 17 months, the UK Government still hasn't responded to the ICJ advisory opinion?
Mr Speaker, the advisory opinion is an important piece of international legal opinion. We're taking our time and making sure we have an adequate response, but I would just remind my honourable friend that it's not like nothing has happened over the course of that 17 months. We have recognised the Palestinian state. That is absolutely central in the deliberations of the advisory opinion, and we have done many other things too, as has been discussed over the course of the session.
Question, Dr. Ellie Chance.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. What action will the UK Government take as a consequence of Israel's flagrant violation of international law in establishing and expanding settlements? The lack of action creates a culture of impunity in which Israel feels able to greenlight the expansion of the E1 settlement, breaking division between the West Bank and East Jerusalem, putting a nail in the coffin of the two-state solution. Will the Foreign Secretary ban trade with illegal settlements to show that violating international law has consequences?
Mr Speaker, from this dispatch box, we have announced 3 waves of sanctions, including on Mr Ben-Gvir and Mr Smotrich. I have discussed with the Honourable Lady the questions around trade on a number of occasions. Any trade with settlements does not benefit from the trade arrangements in place with Green Line Israel. We continue to take steps to ensure that that regime is being enforced in full, and we continue to look at these issues very carefully.
That completes questions. We'll let the front bench change over. I now call the Justice Secretary, David Lammy.
Mr Speaker, with your permission, I will make a statement on criminal court reform. As the House is aware, the first part of the independent review of criminal courts was published in July. I'm grateful to its chair, Sir Brian Levison, one of the foremost judges of his generation, and his expert advisors, Professor David Omeronde, Chris Mayer and Sean McNally. With this review, Sir Brian has produced a blueprint for once-in-a-generation court reform. It's desperately needed, Mr Speaker, because this government inherited an emergency in our courts. A record of rising backlog, currently at 78,000 cases. Victims facing agonising delays, with some trials not listed for years. All the while, defendants bide their time. The guilty plea rate has decreased every year since the year 2000. And in the year to June, 11,000 cases were dropped after a charge because victims no longer supported or felt they could support the case. Behind the statistics are real people. Katie was repeatedly abused by her partner. She reported him to the police in 2017, but then had an unbearable 6-year wait for justice. During this time, she lost a job due to her mental health deteriorating. She became increasingly isolated, lived in fear, and lost faith in the court system. Mr. Speaker, this is not isolated, it's systemic. We're all proud of our justice system rooted in the Magna Carta, but we must never forget that it implores us not to deny or delay justice. When victims are left waiting for years, justice is effectively denied to them. And this is a betrayal of our legal heritage, and it's a betrayal of the victims themselves. Some will ask why we don't simply increase funding. This government has already invested heavily in the courts, nearly 150 million to make them fit for purpose, 92 million committed per year for criminal legal aid solicitors, and funding for a record number of sitting days in our Crown Courts, 5,000 more than those funded last year by the previous government. Today I can announce up to £34 million per year in additional funding for criminal legal aid advocates to recognise the vital support that they give to those navigating the system. I will also accept Sir Brian's recommendation to match fund a number of pupilages in the criminal area, to open a career at the criminal bar to more young people from across society. I will also negotiate sitting days with the senior judiciary through the usual Concord Act process, aiming to give an unprecedented 3-year certainty to the system. I'm clear that sitting days in the Crown Court and Magistrates' Courts must continue to rise, and my ambition is to continue breaking records by the end of this Parliament. But as Sir Brian has made clear, investment is not enough. The caseload is projected to reach 100,000 by 2028, and without fundamental change could keep rising, meaning justice will be denied to more victims and trust in the system will collapse. Mr. Speaker, to avoid that disaster, I will follow Sir Brian's bold blueprint for change. First, I will create new swift courts within the Crown Court with a judge alone deciding verdicts in triable either way cases with a likely sentence of 3 years or less, as Sir Brian recommends. Sir Brian estimates that they will deliver justice at least 20% faster than jury trials. And whilst jury deliberations remain confidential, judges provide reasoning for their verdicts in open court. So this will hardwire transparency into our new approach. Sir Brian also proposes restricting defendants' right to elect for jury trials, a practice not found widely in other common law jurisdictions. And let's be honest, it's a peculiar way to run a public service. Our world-leading judges should hear the most serious cases, and I agree that they and the magistrate should decide where a case is heard. This will prevent defendants from gaming the system, choosing whichever court they think gives the best chance of success and drawing out the process, hoping victims give up. And I will limit appeals from the Magistrates' Court so that they are only allowed on points of law to prevent justice being delayed further. Alongside these changes, we will increase Magistrates' Court sentencing powers to 18 months. So they can take a greater proportion of lower level offending and relieve pressure on the Crown Court. I will also take power to extend that to 2 years, should it become necessary to leave further pressure. And when it comes to exceptionally technical and lengthy fraud and financial trials, judges will be able to sit without a jury where appropriate. While these cases are small in number, they place undue pressures on jurors to sit for months, a significant interference with their personal and professional lives. These reforms are bold, Mr. Speaker, but they're necessary. I'm clear that jury trials will continue to be the cornerstone of the system for the most serious offences, those likely to receive a sentence over 3 years and all indictable-only offences. Among others, this will include rape, murder, manslaughter, grievous bodily harm, robbery and arson with intent to kill. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to clear up some misconceptions that colleagues unfamiliar in this area might hold. In England and Wales, magistrates have long done the vast majority of criminal cases. That was true in the Victorian era, it's right through to Winston Churchill's time, and today magistrates hear about 90% of criminal cases. In fact, only 3% of trial cases in England and Wales will ever go before a jury, and almost 3/4 of all trials going to the Crown Court will continue to be heard by them under our changes. The party opposite talk about the Crown Court as if it were an ancient institution. I should remind them that it was established in 1971, the year before I was born, to replace a patchwork of part-time courts unable to cope with the rising caseload. Parliament acted because the country needed a more efficient system that could command public confidence. We now face an emergency in the courts, and we must act. As Lord Chancellor, my responsibility is to ground reform in the rule of law and the right to a fair trial. We will ensure cases are dealt with at the right level, proportionate to their severity, and deliver the swifter justice victims deserve. I'm also clear that we must future-proof our approach. Technology is changing almost every aspect of our lives, and the courts can be no exception. This means that we must modernise, Mr. Speaker. We have asked Sir Brian to write a second report focused on efficiency and how we can make much better use of technology to deliver the modern and effective courts the public rightly expect. Mr. Speaker, we'll also continue to support victims to make sure that they have the confidence to come forward and see justice through to its conclusion. I announced this week that I will provide multi-year funding for victim support services, including specialist emotional and practical support for victims of domestic violence and domestic abuse, and increase budgets to reflect rising costs. And this will give providers a certainty to plan for the next 3 years. And it amounts to a total investment, a record investment in victims of £550 million, more than £500 million. I want those victims to stay the course. Finally, we must also be honest that this is a problem that has taken years to build up. It will take years to fix. The changes I'm proposing will require legislation that will take time to implement. Our investment will also need time to have an effect. But we are pulling every possible lever to move in a positive direction, and my ambition for the backlog to start coming down by the end of this Parliament remains. And I commend this statement to the House.
Yeah. We now come to Shadow Justice Secretary Robert Jenner.
Well, I'm glad to see that the Justice Secretary has finally come into work today. When 12 prisoners were mistakenly released after the introduction of his brilliant new checks, he didn't bother to come to Parliament to inform the country. Then when I asked his department whether it's paying compensation to terrorists in prison, he didn't show up. And when the news of his plans to scrap jury trials mysteriously emerged in the press last week, he was nowhere to be seen. Like the prisoners under his watch, he's been a man on the run, the Lammy Dodger of this sorry charade for a government. But now today we are blessed with his presence, and his past is catching up with him, because the best opponent of the Justice Secretary's plans to curb jury trials is the Justice Secretary himself. In 2020, he said, "Criminal trials without juries are a bad idea. You don't fix the backlog with trials that are widely perceived as unfair." In 2017, in his report into prejudice in the criminal justice system, he found juries, and I quote, "act as a filter for prejudice." But now he's become Justice Secretary, he's scrapping the very institution he once lauded. Which is it? Will the real David Lammy please stand up? And it isn't just him. Who can guess which Labour MP said taking away jury trials would be a wholly draconian act? It's his junior minister. And what about this? There should be a right to trial by jury in all criminal cases. Any ideas, Mr. Speaker? Who else? It's the Prime Minister this time. Does this government have no shame? Now, yesterday the Justice Secretary boldly claimed that if the medieval barons were around today, they'd support his changes. Well, then again, English history has never been his specialist subject, has it? 800 years on from the Magna Carta, we have another unpopular leader who doesn't listen to his subjects, levies eye-watering taxes, and a state that locks people up for what they say. Well, I say, the link between British citizens and the administration of justice is as important as ever. A link that serves as a check on an occasionally overbearing state. Our ancestors did not stop bad King John, only to be undone 800 years later by this Prime Minister and his court jester. And all of this because the Justice Secretary can't manage his own department. This morning, more than 50 Crown courtrooms sit empty in England alone.
Can I just gently say, I wanted, quite rightly, the Justice Secretary to be heard without comment from the front benches, so I certainly expect the same in return. Do we understand?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This morning, more than 50 Crown courtrooms sit empty in England alone. In fact, over 21,000 court days have gone unused this year. And why? Not because there are too many juries, but because the Justice Secretary won't fund the sitting days. Had he done so, the backlog would have shrunk by up to 10,000 cases rather than the fact it's risen this year. The truth is, scrapping juries is a choice. This government could find the money to bear down on the backlog of asylum claims. It could find the money to spend more on benefits, just not to fund the courts to sit round the clock. Last year, the entire budget for courts and legal aid was £5.5 billion. Almost exactly the same amount of money, £5.4 billion, that we spent on illegal migrants. He defends their rights under the ECHR, but not our rights under Magna Carta. And for what? He can't even guarantee that in 4 years' time, this will reduce the backlog. With this Justice Secretary, it is justice delayed and justice denied. So I ask him, much of the rest of the package announced today is sensible, but why has it taken 17 months? The Bar Council, the Law Society, the Criminal Bar Association have all said that jury trials are not the problem.
You're facing the wrong way. It's very hard when you're looking at the doors. Thank you.
Just, Mr. Speaker. So why did he not start by reforming the probation service, the court listings, and tackling delays from late prison transfers? Why has he still not taken up the Lady Chief Justice on all the sitting days she's offered him? And lastly, why on earth does this Justice Secretary think he has a mandate to rip up centuries of jury trials without even a mention of it in his party's manifesto? In his twisted logic, he says he's scrapping juries to save them. But be in no doubt, if the Justice Secretary gets away with this, is the beginning of the end of jury trials. He's already in retreat. Let's unite to send him packing for good.
Justice Secretary.
Well, I'm very grateful to the Shadow Justice Secretary, and I am a little surprised that in his tirade he never once mentioned victims. Not once. Not once in his clip did he talk about the people waiting in that backlog. He's boasted about himself as an armchair historian. Can I just give him a history lesson, Mr. Speaker? In 2019, sitting days in the Crown Court were cut by almost 15%. They oversaw a 12% reduction in Crown Court trials. And many of us remember, over those 14 years of austerity, the magistrates' courts that closed in local communities, the Crown courts that closed in local communities under his watch. It was a political decision, not my words, the words of the senior presiding judge of England and Wales. I wonder how he'll try to blame the pandemic for that decision. He talks about what I tweeted in 2020. We are saving and protecting jury trials.